And can you tell us what's going on?
Yes, so we are consolidating the plaster ceiling in St. Peter's Church, and that's a process that we have developed over the years. In this particular application, we're doing something called remote consolidation. So we're applying material to the back of the plaster from the face by drilling small injection holes and using a specialized tool with spray nozzles that spray material in a known pattern. We insert the nozzle through the hole and apply our materials over there. We have 3 different types of material that we mix that are prepared for us actually in Port Hope, and that's where all the material for our company is prepared. But we mix it on site with water and to various dilutions and apply a primer application that soaks into the plaster and breaks surface tension for subsequent richer solutions to penetrate. The material is an acrylic-based consolidant, and it soaks into the plaster, and it also gets into the space between the plaster and the lath and all the cracks in the plaster and strengthens it, basically. It converts the plaster from a sort of a mechanically suspended system to an adhered system, and enables you to do other work on the building that you might not have been able to do because of the condition of the plaster, and breathes new life into it.
So this is the start of the process of the, if I say restoration, and where does it go from here then? Like, and how long will this take, if you know?
So our process is relatively quick, in this case anyway. There's not many obstacles, so we're expecting approximately 2 weeks to do what we need to do. The larger project, I don't know how long that is, but much longer, I suspect. There are many elements, including building envelope issues and other interior restoration issues that have to be addressed, I believe.
Tell me about how long it took, and if you know, and again, if you know the height of where we are, but tell us about even the obstacles that people wouldn't think of. We're so high up that the heat, and talk a little bit about that, and how long it took to get the scaffolding this way.
So the scaffolding is quite difficult to erect for a number of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of it. It's a delicate space, so the people that install the scaffolding have to be very careful about the church property and the heritage finishes throughout the building. And then it's an older building. There's no air conditioning in here currently. I don't know if there ever is, but there certainly isn't right now. And it's very hot. To compound that, we've now basically put in what amounts to, it's a floor, but it also amounts to a ceiling. And we are above that. And below this roof that's collecting heat, and it gets, well in excess of 40 degrees up here at times. And when you're in fact on top of the scaffolding, rolling scaffolding platforms up here, it's blistering hot. You can't do anything, and you have to make sure you drink a lot of water, take lots of breaks.
It must be nice to work on these things and see the finished product when you see these historically
It is.
buildings.
Yeah, it is. I mean, oftentimes we're not the last ones on site. So, sometimes we don't get a chance to, but I often revisit the sites that we've been to. And certainly this will be one of those, because I'm from Port Hope and I'll be back many times. So I look forward to seeing it when it's complete. But it won't look much different when we're done. Our work. That's one of the interesting things. People, when we do our work, it's kind of invisible most of the time.
At least you want it to be.
Yeah,
That's the whole goal of it, I take it.
Exactly.
Tell us where to get out of the way, guys.
All right, we're gonna go right around there.
Okay.
We realized we had to do this before we put the large one in position. Hurry, hurry. So,
any case, you know what? We'll leave this here for now. We'll move the big one into position so that you can get a shot of standing up there with the tool if you like. That would be helpful. Be a lot easier if just feeling it flat. It's messy. It's got a stainless steel nozzle on the end of it, attached to basically like an arrow sprayer gun, but a custom built nozzle that we've designed. The nozzle has two holes on one side and two holes 180 degrees. So it sprays this way, right? It sprays in two directions at once, right? So you can stick this up through the hole that's drilled in the plaster, the access hole, and depending on how far up you put it, that determines the range of your coverage, right? And when you lower it, it reduces the range, so it can go up and down, and you can cover a given area. And the amount of time it's in the hole is timed, and we know the application, so we can determine exactly how much material we've put on a given area, right? So it involves drilling a hole in the joist cavity. So you also have to map out the ceiling, right? So in this case, we can see through some holes in the ceiling, and we can figure out where the joists are to make sure that we drill a hole in the center of the cavity. But there are all sorts of tricks to finding them. You can use magnets, because we know the lath are attached to the joists with nails. So if you get a very strong rare earth magnet, it will detect the nails, and so you know that there's a joist there, right? There are other methods too. Sometimes you can actually see them. If the building's old enough and there's enough dirt and debris up there, it settles through, and you can see sort of a ghosted pattern of the lath and the joists. That can be a good indication as well. Yeah.
Once you drill the hole, put the material in, what does the material do then?
It's so the material penetrates the plaster. It soaks into the plaster itself, but it also soaks into the spaces between the plaster and the lath and the joists. It goes into the cracks of the plaster. That's the first coat is a primer, and it's very thin. It's like the consistency of skimmed milk. It soaks in very, very quickly, and it breaks surface tension to allow the subsequent coats of material that are thicker. The next one's the consistency of, say, 3% milk, and then final one is like heavy cream. Once the primer's on, those thicker applications will soak in as well.
And that seals everything.
It's not so much a sealant, but it strengthens it. It's similar to, well, it's like the binder in acrylic paint to some degree. Yeah. A little bit. It does coat the back of the plaster, but we're really not trying for a coating. What we're trying to do is get the material to soak in, right? So that's the goal. There's often, when you look at it when it's finished, you can often see a coating because some of the material coalesces on the surface. But the idea is really to get it in. It's not really doing much on the surface, right? It's really functional when it's in the plaster between the spaces in the lath and in the cracks and whatnot.
And will you do that everywhere, or is it just in where it's needed? Or?
No. So we do the entire ceiling. It's typically we're addressing a systemic problem that has been created over years of time, right? And it's very rare that you would treat just a portion of one ceiling. The only time we'd ever do that is if it's an independent plaster system that's not a part of a ceiling, but a separate ceiling or a separate assembly, right? Then we can do that. I wouldn't suggest ever consolidating a portion of one plaster ceiling and not doing the rest. Yeah. One of those that's already existing? Too hard. It's too hard. Yeah, just go up there. Good. The one you got. So, and I gotta do this. not going to spray anything. He's just going to hold that up there for you.
You got 20 in there?
He's not going to spray anything.
That's before.
Is he doing video? So you can go up and down. Just pretend.
We couldn't open those two back up because these were here, so these are.
Do these two? Sure.
How's that, James?
Randy, tell me about the fundraising side of this. Obviously, seeing what we saw today, there's a lot of work involved, and with a lot of work comes a lot of cost.
Yes, you're right there for sure. We've got a $1,350,000 goal in front of us, and myself and Peter Delanty and Liz McCoggy are three key parts at this point in any case. And we're now just moving our fundraising efforts into the Cobourg community. The church, of course, has had its own separate fundraising and has done quite well on it, but we're now trying to get that last $1,350,000.
How much does the whole entire cost? And tell us how you got to this stage, so to speak.
Well, the stated cost at this point is $2,700,000 to get everything done. That'll bring the bells back. That'll bring the tower back, et cetera, the bell tower, and actually refurbish the church as needs to be happening. We've got some major issues structurally that you can't put aluminum siding on a 200 and some odd year old building. You have to have it professionally done, and this is not an inexpensive thing to have done.
Just started it here, but it's going to be a long process.
Certainly is. We have our first fundraiser, if you will. It's on August the 25th at the Yacht Club. We have a dinner. We're hoping that we're going to get up to 140 people out to that dinner, and we'll be kicking off a number of things. I'm doing a live auction of 3 or 4 items, and there are a number of plans over the next year or so to go to the community, go to those in the community that may have not only an interest in the church itself, but certainly an interest in restoring a gem of Cobourg. I mean, the streetscape, the fact that this church was built in 1818, and just to have that wonderful heritage concern that so many of us have.
We saw what was happening on the inside. What will be happening after that's completed?
Well, we next go to the bell tower, I think, which has some structural damage, some bricks that are beginning to crumble, et cetera, so that will need to be done. It has to be the carillon, the bells that used to play up to about 3 years ago require strengthening to hold that and to be able to get those working again.